What if I told you that the same hands that broke 5 loaves and 2 fish and fed thousands are reaching toward you right now? What if I told you that the same God who looked upon a hungry crowd in the wilderness with compassion is looking at your life with the same tender gaze today? This is not just a story from the past, it is a living promise for your present. You didn't stumble into this moment by chance. God brought you here because He has something to say to your weary heart, something to speak into the middle of your need, your questions, your struggle, and your waiting. And if you'll lean in with faith, if you'll open your heart just a little wider, you'll hear it. A whisper from heaven, reminding you that He has not forgotten how to provide. You see, in a world that often measures worth by possessions, success by status, and strength by self-sufficiency, God steps in and rewrites the narrative. He chooses the empty so He can fill it. He chooses the hungry so He can feed them. He chooses the broken so He can restore. That's why this message is for you, not because you have it all together, but because you know what it feels like to need a miracle. Quote, and today you're going to be reminded that your lack is not the end of the story, it's just the beginning of His intervention. This isn't just a message about provision, it's about the nature of a God who sees you, a God who moves toward you with compassion, a God who multiplies what you surrender, a God who provides not only enough to sustain you, but more than enough to overflow into every area of your life. And as you listen today, I pray your spirit stirs with fresh expectation, that doubt begins to fall away, that heaviness begins to lift. Because by the end of this message, you'll remember what your heart may have forgotten. The same God who fed the multitudes is about to provide for you. Stay with me to the very end. Let every word soak into your soul, because this could be the reminder you've been needing, the one that awakens your faith, reignites your hope, and prepares you to receive what heaven has already begun to release in your direction. The God who fed the multitudes with 5 loaves and 2 fish is the same today, unchanged and unchanging. His character remains consistent through generations. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That truth is not just a theological statement. It is the solid ground upon which we stand when life feels unstable, when needs press in like waves, and when the cupboards of our lives feel empty. The same God who looked upon the hungry crowd with compassion is looking upon your life right now with the same eyes of mercy and love. He does not forget how to care. He does not withdraw His compassion. He does not retreat when you need Him the most. In fact, it is in your need that His nature is most clearly seen. Just as He saw the multitude and knew they were weary and hungry, He sees you, and He still has the same power to satisfy. It's easy to believe that the miracles of the Bible were reserved for a different time, a holier era, or a special people. But that belief denies the very heart of God. If He could provide for thousands in the wilderness then, what stops Him from doing the same now? The hands that broke the bread and blessed the fish are still active in the lives of His people. His desire to provide hasn't faded. His arm hasn't grown weak. His heart hasn't grown cold. The multitudes weren't fed because they were perfect or powerful. They were fed because they were present, and because God's compassion moved Him to act. That same compassion is at work in your life. You don't have to earn your miracle. You don't have to beg or bargain for God to see you. He already does. When Jesus looked out at the crowd, He didn't turn to His disciples and say, "Send them away to find food." He said, "You give them something to eat." And when they said they had nothing but 5 loaves and 2 fish, He didn't say, "It wasn't enough." He said, "Bring it here to me." That moment revealed something powerful. It shows that Jesus never asks you to have enough. He asks you to trust Him with what you have, and He shows you that He is still the same God who works wonders with little things. The same God who blessed that small meal and multiplied it to feed thousands hasn't changed. He still takes what is surrendered to Him and turns it into more than enough. You may be in a place where you're looking at your life and wondering how the need will be met. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's spiritual. But the answer doesn't begin with your resources, it begins with your understanding of who God is. If you believe He is the same God who fed the multitudes, then you can believe He will provide for you, not because you deserve it, but because He delights in doing it. He finds joy in meeting the needs of His people. He is still the shepherd who makes you lie down in green pastures. He is still the provider who prepares a table before you, even in the presence of your enemies. The crowd that was fed that day went home full, not just because food was given, but because Jesus was there. His presence changed their situation. And His presence can change yours too. He is the same God, not similar, not slightly different, the same. And that truth is your anchor in times of need. When Jesus fed the multitude, there was no visible abundance in sight, only 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish offered by a young boy. In the natural, it was impossible to meet the hunger of thousands with so little. But Jesus did not look at the limitation of the resources. He looked at the limitless power of God. That's the lesson embedded in this miracle. Divine provision is not confined to the size of your bank account, the connections you have, or the opportunities that seem open to you. It is not tied to the economy, to your job title, or to what others think is possible. God's ability to provide defies all human logic. When you serve a God who created everything out of nothing, then even your nothing becomes a doorway for His supernatural supply. So often people get discouraged because what they have in their hands looks too small. They believe they need more before God can move, but God doesn't operate according to what you lack. He responds to faith and obedience. He doesn't wait for you to have enough. He wants you to trust Him with what you do have. The 5 loaves and 2 fish were not enough, yet in the hands of Jesus, they became more than enough. Yet this shows that it's not about how much you possess, but whose hands it's placed in. When you release your little into His hands, He releases His abundance into your life. That is the divine exchange, your scarcity for His sufficiency. God's provision comes from a different realm. It's not governed by the systems of this world. When Jesus looked at the hungry multitude, He didn't panic. He didn't say, "There's not enough." He gave thanks. That act of gratitude over something so small is what unlocked the miracle. It teaches us that gratitude in lack is a seed for abundance. Sometimes the key to your breakthrough is not striving for more, but thanking God for what you already have. When you can thank Him in the little, He can trust you with the overflow. The people sitting in that crowd were likely unaware of the spiritual principle being demonstrated before their eyes. They only saw food being multiplied. But something deeper was happening. God was showing them that He is not limited by the visible, that what looks insufficient in the natural becomes more than enough in the supernatural. He was showing that His kingdom operates by different rules. Where the world says, "There's not enough," God says, "Watch me multiply it." Where the world says, "You'll never make it," God says, "My grace is sufficient for you." You might be in a season where your resources are few. Your strength might be failing. Your hope might feel thin. But take courage. God is not asking you to bring a banquet. He's asking you to bring what you have. And in His hands it becomes enough. He is not intimidated by your smallness. He's not worried by your lack. He is not wringing His hands in heaven, trying to figure out how to help you. He is waiting for your surrender, because what you place in His hands becomes the vessel for His glory. The miracle of provision didn't begin with a warehouse of food. It began with a little boy who didn't withhold what seemed too small. It began with someone willing to offer the little, and with a Savior willing to bless it. Your situation is not too far gone. Your lack is not a barrier to His provision. He doesn't need much to do much. He just needs your faith. What you see as limitation, God sees as an opportunity to show you that His provision has never depended on quantity. It has always depended on Him. Before a single voice cried out in hunger among the multitudes, Jesus already knew they were in need. Before the disciples recognized the problem or tried to offer a solution, Jesus had already seen it. He looked out upon the vast crowd that had followed Him into a remote and empty place. And He knew that they were not only spiritually hungry, but also physically weary. That is the kind of God we serve, one who sees our needs before we speak them, one who understands our emptiness even when we cannot put it into words, one who prepares to provide long before we realize what we lack. This is not just a reflection of his awareness, but of his deep and unfailing love. God's provision is never reactive. It is always intentional. He does not wait to be informed of your needs. He sees your silent tears, the prayers you've whispered in the middle of the night, the burdens you carry that no one else notices. He sees the gaps in your life, the places where provision has not yet arrived, the areas where you're holding on by faith alone. And, just like he did with the multitude, he has already prepared a way. You may not see the outcome, you may not have the answers, and you may not know the path forward, but God does. He has not abandoned you to figure it all out. He has not turned his face from your pain or your lack. He is watching over you with the same compassionate eyes that watched over that crowd in the wilderness. In that moment, Jesus didn't just feed the people because they asked. He moved first. He initiated the miracle. The need was seen by him before it was even fully understood by those who were experiencing it. That is how tender his heart is. He anticipates the hunger, the exhaustion, the fear, the questions, and he moves in advance. He is always ahead of you. While you're still wondering how the situation will work out, he's already setting the stage. While you're still calculating how much it will cost or how long it will take, he's already aligning the right people, the right doors, and the right resources. Even when the disciples suggested sending the people away to find food for themselves, Jesus resisted. He said, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." That statement wasn't just about the disciples' role in the miracle. It was also about God's commitment to care. He didn't want the people to leave empty. He didn't want them to go without. He wanted them to stay and receive. And that desire has not changed. God still wants you to stay in his presence and receive what you need. He's not trying to send you away to figure things out on your own. He's inviting you to draw near and trust him. The needs you're facing today are not a surprise to God. He saw them coming long before you did, and in his wisdom and sovereignty, he has already begun to answer. Sometimes the delay we feel is not a lack of attention. It is the divine timing of a God who is working things together in ways we cannot yet see. Just as he fed the crowd in the perfect moment, he will meet your need in the perfect time. He is not early and he is never late. He is always on time, and his provision always fits the shape of the need. So take heart in knowing that you are not unseen. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. The same God who looked with compassion upon that vast, tired crowd is looking at you now. And he knows exactly what you need. Before you speak it, he's already moving toward you with his answer. When Jesus fed the multitude, the miracle didn't start with the crowd or even with the disciples. It started with one small act of surrender. A young boy had 5 loaves and 2 fish, and he gave them up. That simple act became the doorway to one of the most powerful demonstrations of divine provision in Scripture. What was placed in Jesus' hands was not enough by human standards. But once it was surrendered, it became the foundation for a miracle. This teaches us something deep about the way God works. He does not demand perfection. He does not wait for your resources to match the size of your problem. What he looks for is your willingness to trust him enough to let go of what little you have and place it in his hands. God is not looking for ability as much as he is looking for availability. The boy could have kept the lunch to himself. He could have thought, "This won't help anyone else anyway." But he didn't. He gave it. And that act of giving, of obedience and surrender, became the seed for something divine. In your own life, it may feel like what you have is small, insignificant, or unworthy of God's attention. But when placed into his hands, the small becomes significant. The surrendered becomes sacred. The limited becomes limitless. That is the power of surrender. God multiplies what is released to him. Obedience is often the first step into the miraculous. Many people pray for provision, pray for increase, pray for answers, but they hold tightly to the very thing God is asking them to release. Sometimes it's not a physical thing. It could be control, pride, fear, or a specific plan. But as long as it remains in your grasp, it stays what it is. It is only when you give it to Him that it becomes what He intends it to be. The 5 loaves and 2 fish in the boy's hands were lunch, but in Jesus' hands, they were the answer to the hunger of thousands. In your hands, what you carry may look ordinary. In His hands, it becomes extraordinary. There is a spiritual principle at work here. God blesses what is given. He doesn't multiply what is withheld. The boy gave all he had. He didn't hold back a portion for himself. That complete surrender invited complete provision. God often works through sacrifice, not because He wants to take something from you, but because He wants to create space to give something greater to you. The act of surrender aligns your heart with His will. It places you in a posture of trust, and it makes you a candidate for the miraculous. Just like the oil and flour in the widow's home in the Old Testament didn't run out when she obeyed and made the prophet a cake first, God still honors faith-driven acts of obedience. The miracle didn't come from a throne or a temple. It came from a lunch bag. And that's what makes it so powerful. It means that your offering, your act of obedience, no matter how small, can become the vessel through which God does something great. You don't need to be powerful to see provision. You don't need to be rich to witness multiplication. You just need to be willing to obey and surrender. You may not see the impact immediately, but obedience always sets something into motion. Heaven responds to faith that is acted upon. And when you let go of what you're holding in trust, you are opening yourself to what only God can do. So give Him the little. Give Him the broken pieces. Give Him the fragments of your strength. He is not waiting for you to have more. He is waiting for you to release what you already have. In that release, the miracle begins. When Jesus fed the multitude, He didn't stop when everyone had just enough. He kept multiplying the bread and the fish until every person was fully satisfied, and even then, there were 12 baskets left over. That is not a coincidence, nor is it excess for the sake of extravagance. It reveals something profound about the heart of God. He is not the God of barely enough. He is not just meeting the need to keep you going. He is the God of more than enough. His provision doesn't stop at sufficiency. It overflows. That's who He has always been and who He continues to be. The world teaches us to expect just enough to survive, to aim for the minimum, to stretch the little we have and hope it lasts. But God doesn't operate by the world's scarcity mindset. He operates by the abundance of His kingdom. His storehouses are not empty. His resources are not limited. He doesn't ration blessings, nor does He struggle to find ways to meet your needs. He has more than you can ask, think, or imagine. The 12 baskets left over were not an accident. They were a message to everyone present that day and to everyone reading this account centuries later, that God doesn't stop at just enough. Many people pray for provision with an expectation shaped by their pain. They've been disappointed, let down, or hurt by people or systems that promised more but gave less. So they approach God cautiously, hoping for just a small blessing, afraid to believe for more. But the miracle of the loaves and fish stands as a declaration that you can believe for more. You can expect the overflow, not because you deserve it, but because He delights in giving it. You don't have to beg God to bless you. You just have to trust that He is who He says He is, a loving Father who knows how to give good gifts to His children. The overflow isn't just about material blessing either. It's about the nature of God's response. When He answers fully. When He restores completely. When He blesses abundantly. He does not give you peace in pieces. He gives peace that passes understanding. He doesn't offer a temporary joy. He gives fullness of joy. He doesn't offer strength for today only. He gives you strength renewed like the eagle. Every part of His nature points to abundance. Every part of His promise carries the fragrance of more than enough. And even in the overflow, nothing is wasted. When the disciples gathered the remaining food, 12 baskets were filled. Those leftovers were not forgotten. They were a visible reminder that God provides not only for the moment, but beyond the moment, that He sustains what He starts, that He finishes what He begins. In your own life, God's blessings will not only meet the need you've prayed about, they will pour over into other areas, touching people around you, strengthening other parts of your life, confirming that He sees you, knows you, and cares deeply. Sometimes the enemy tries to convince you that you're only worthy of scraps, that your past, your failures, your mistakes limit what God can do for you. But the story of the loaves and fish reminds us that the crowd was not perfect, the disciples were confused, and yet the miracle still came. God's generosity is not based on your perfection, it's based on His character. He gives not according to your goodness, but according to His riches in glory. So expect the overflow. Don't limit your faith to survival when God is calling you to walk in abundance. Don't shrink your prayers down to what seems possible. Trust that the same God who made sure there were 12 baskets left is the same God watching over your life right now, ready to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that you ask or imagine. The place where Jesus fed the multitude was not a city center, nor was it a place of comfort and convenience. It was a desolate, isolated wilderness. It was far from markets, far from homes, far from the ordinary places where provision might have been expected. Yet it was in that very place, the place where human logic said there's nothing here, that Jesus chose to reveal the miraculous. This tells us something powerful about how God works. His provision is not limited by location, situation, or even human expectation. He can show up in the most barren seasons of your life and provide in ways that defy understanding. What may feel like a wilderness to you is often a stage God uses to show His glory. Many times, when people find themselves in dry seasons, they assume that something has gone wrong. When they feel stranded, forgotten, or stretched thin, they think it must mean that God is distant. But the feeding of the 5,000 proves the opposite. The multitude followed Jesus into a remote place because they were hungry for His words. They weren't led there by accident. They were drawn by divine purpose. And though it looked like a place of lack, it became the place of abundance. That's how God works. He leads you into places where the natural doesn't make sense, so He can reveal the supernatural. He allows you to reach the end of your strength, so He can display His strength. When you have nothing left, you're finally in position to receive what only He can give. Trusting God in the wilderness is one of the greatest tests of faith. It means believing that He's still present even when the environment is dry. It means holding on to His promises even when there's no evidence around you that anything is changing. It means praising Him when the need still looms large and nothing appears to be multiplying. But if you look at Scripture, the wilderness has always been a place where God meets His people. It was in the wilderness that manna fell from heaven. It was in the wilderness that water flowed from a rock. It was in the wilderness that Elijah was fed by ravens. And it was in a wilderness place that Jesus fed thousands with almost nothing. God specializes in showing up when the odds are stacked high. He doesn't need favorable conditions to bless you. He doesn't need a perfect atmosphere to work a miracle. He needs your trust. Your wilderness season may feel like isolation, but it is actually preparation. The discomfort may be stretching your faith, but it is also expanding your capacity to receive. God doesn't waste your wilderness. He uses it, He molds you in it, He purifies you through it, and when the time is right, He brings provision so unmistakable that only He can get the glory. Even the timing of the miracle was intentional. It wasn't rushed. It came after a long day when the people were tired and hungry. It came when the disciples suggested a natural solution: send them away. But Jesus had a better plan. He always does. And just like then, you may be looking around and thinking the answer is far away. You may be tempted to turn back, to give up, or to find a human workaround. But God is saying, stay with me. I will provide. Even here. Especially here. Because when He provides in the wilderness, you know it's Him. There's no other explanation. And that kind of provision doesn't just meet your need, it builds your faith. So don't despise the dry places. Don't curse the seasons that feel empty. They are often the places where God chooses to reveal Himself most powerfully. He knows exactly where you are. He knows what you need, and He has not forgotten you. Just like He did in that lonely place by the sea, He is about to feed your soul, meet your need, and prove once again that He is the God who provides, even in the wilderness. As we reach the conclusion of this message, let us pause and reflect deeply on what has been unveiled through the miracle of the loaves and the fish. The same God who fed the multitude in a barren place with what seemed like not enough is still the same God watching over you today. His heart has not changed. His power has not faded. His compassion has not diminished. What He did then, He is more than able to do now. The crowd did not earn the miracle. They didn't perform for it. They simply followed Jesus, and He met them in their place of need. That same invitation is extended to you now. Come to Him with your hunger, with your emptiness, with your lack, and watch Him provide, not just enough to survive, but more than enough to overflow. We've walked through 6 powerful truths. We've seen how God's character never changes, how His provision is not limited by what we hold, how He sees our need before we can even speak it, how surrender unlocks multiplication, how He blesses with abundance beyond the need, and how even the wilderness becomes holy ground for divine provision. This is not just a collection of spiritual ideas. It is a declaration of who your God is. He is faithful, He is generous, He is personal, and He is near. If you've been feeling forgotten, take heart. He has not forgotten you. If you've been feeling like your resources are too small, remember, little becomes much in His hands. If you've been wandering in a dry season, know this: your miracle may be moments away. This is the time to renew your trust in Him. This is the time to believe again, hope again, and surrender again. The provision is not delayed because God is far. Sometimes He waits not because He is withholding, but because He is preparing. And when the moment is right, He will meet your need in a way that leaves no doubt. It was Him all along. So lift your eyes above the lack, above the fear, above the uncertainty. Fix your gaze on the one who has never failed to feed His people. The same Jesus who looked at the multitude and said, "They do not need to go away," is speaking over your life right now. You don't need to go away empty. You don't need to walk away defeated. He is present and He is enough. Before we part, I want to thank each of you for opening your hearts today. Thank you for listening, for leaning in, for choosing to believe again. I don't take it lightly that you've taken time to receive this word. Whether you're here in a room full of people or sitting in quiet solitude, I want you to know God sees you, and I pray you leave this message strengthened in your faith, encouraged in your spirit, and full of fresh expectation. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are deeply loved, and God is already moving on your behalf. So go forward today, not with fear, but with faith. Walk in the truth that the same God who fed the multitude is about to provide for you. Not later, not eventually, but soon. Stay in His presence, keep your heart surrendered, and prepare yourself, because overflow is coming. Thank you again for being part of this moment. May God bless you richly, abundantly, and beyond all you can imagine. Amen.